Hey guys, Steve at Eichmo. Today, my friend Alan performed an experiment with knives. Why did we do this? Because a lot of you guys ask us, well, what happens if I'm actually cut with a knife or stabbed with a knife during a fight? How bad would it be? What would the effect be? And while we're doing knife defenses, it's impossible to immobilize a guy's arm completely. So how much is too much? What if his wrist wiggles a little? What if his arm has a little mobility? How deadly would that be for me? So our friend Don is going to be here to explain it to us right now.
So basically the question we're trying to answer is, how hard does the knife have to hit? How much force has to be applied to be dangerous? So we're going to do some test cutting to have some data to base that on, rather than just guessing. So I haven't seen a lot of people in the self-defense community doing cutting, but it's a common thing in the sword community, in the HEMA community, to test with their swords. So a really simple, easily available target is water bottles. Now you can argue that tatami mats and ballistic gel are more realistic, but there's pros and cons to those as well. One of them being that the resistance is going to be even all the way through. It's not going to be tougher on the outside and softer on the inside the way a body is, with the exception of obviously bone. So what we want to know is, we're going to be testing different levels of cut. So very small movement, as if the hand and arm are fairly restrained. So medium cuts where the arm maybe is partially blocked or it's being held, but it's still free to move somewhat. And then obviously the difference between that and just when the person has a full range of motion. Obviously I expect that is going to cut no problem. The question is, how is the medium and the light going to be able to do? We also want to do it with some t-shirts on the water bottle afterwards. I don't expect the t-shirt to make a huge difference. Maybe it'll make difference on the lightest cut, but it's the sort of clothing people wear in Florida where we are. So we're going to be using two different knives. We have a regular kitchen knife. It's new, it's sharp, it's thin, so it should do fairly well, and these are commonly used in violent incidents. The other is just a decent pocket knife, not high end, not super cheap. It's got some dull spots, but it's still reasonably sharp. Now, I expect from doing some cutting with swords that the stabs, the thrusts are not going to be a problem, right? The cuts, maybe. If the cut is, the blade is sharp and the edge is aligned with the direction of the cut, it should probably work fine. However, when you're cutting, if the edge is not aligned with the cut may be very superficial, or in some cases, just won't cut at all. The target may just get knocked over. All right, just so you know, just to show before we start, all right. Sharp, not perfect. Ah. So, this one's a little bit older. Lost a little bit of its edge. So we're going to start with light. So wrist movement and not much more. Then we're going to try from the elbow and then with a full range of motion. See what the difference is. All right. So it's a scratch, but barely through. So from the elbow. It's definitely cutting, but fairly superficial. Right? The full range of motion. So So those go through, but obviously it did make a difference how much force we're using. He is leaking now. All right, but so well, we still got this guy here. How much easier is thrusting? So I'll go light. Light is not doing much. A little bit of a range of motion, it comes in and out. But if I'm restricted, it's not doing very much. But if I can move from here, it'll go right through. Not too much different from what we expected. So, kitchen knife. Because, at least what we know from the UK, far more often it's just a kitchen knife that is used in violent crimes. So once again, light. It's a sharper blade, but it's not making too much of a difference in terms of a light cut. Now, from the elbow. So that got through, perhaps a little bit more. All right, now the full range of motion. So, what that tells me, if you see, well, you know from if you've ever watched someone cutting with a sword, when the target gets knocked over, that usually means that either the edge wasn't sharp, and we know this is reasonably sharp, or the edge wasn't in line. And if it just knocks the target over, probably wouldn't have cut very well, because the blade, this is not secure in place, but neither is a person. They can move. Right, so see if we can get through. There. Ooh, got that one all messed up. So, in a way, pretty much what I expected from cutting with swords. If the technique is right, it can go through very easily, almost like it's not there. If it's a little bit off, nothing happens. So, that's just a water bottle, no fabric in the way. So let's see, does a little bit of fabric make much of a difference? Starting out with just a single t-shirt because we're in Florida. I mean, that's usually what people wear. You know, if they're wearing that. So, light. Getting through the shirt, but not much more. All right, from the elbow. So, not helping very much, right? So obviously if that can get through, a full swing will get through. And I don't expect it to make any difference in terms of a thrust. Yeah, like it's not there. So, well, he's in trouble. Shouldn't be too much different with the kitchen knife. All right, light. So, some scratches, not much. A lot of that's from just falling in the water. With a little bit more freedom, right through. So if it makes any difference, it's only in the lightest. And of course, thrusting is like butter. So this is just 2 layers. So with the lightest, getting through the first, barely through the second. A little more. He busted. All right. With freedom, it gets through much more. But just like with a larger blade, one of the problems with cutting is if the edge is not in line with the direction the blade is moving, it just doesn't cut. So light, still not making too much difference. Yeah, 2, 3, 4 layers. Sorry for the audio issues. I'm gonna have to narrate over the end of here. Want to make sure that we covered stabbing with varying ranges of motions in order to simulate the arm being controlled or restrained by the defender. You can see that it still penetrates easily, very easily. I mean, it's a little hard to convey how little effort it took. But despite that, you can see that the range of motion does affect the depth that the knife penetrates. So what's the conclusion? Obviously, knives are still scary and dangerous. They can cut and stab even with a limited range of motion. But the seriousness of the injury is reduced by how much motion that is allowed. The light clothing had little, if any, effect. Edge alignment wasn't much of an issue, but it might occur more often in the chaos of a real encounter. We could possibly simulate that using a moving target in the future. So I think we've started to answer some of the questions, but there's still more to explore in future videos. We need to continue researching the available statistics about injuries and mortality rates. We need to watch more footage of real incidents, and we need to continue testing possible solutions and defenses. So be sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss those future videos. And remember, humans are fallible creatures. What matters is that we learn from our mistakes. Keep training.